Hello everyone again, and in this video I will be addressing a recent video made by, again, this content creator. And in this video he proposed this thing he called the Lego bricks theory of biblical interpretation. It's a long video, and I'm not planning to address all the things. There were just few issues that I thought were quite problematic, at least it seemed to me. So these are the things that I'm going to address, and I have only short clips of the original video. So once again, I very much do recommend you go and see the original one in order to see that, I'm not putting words in anyone's mouth. To summarize very quickly what this Lego bricks theory of biblical interpretation is. It is the analogy of a big box of Lego bricks that originate from several different sets of Legos. Some of the bits may be missing, and they are all mixed up, the different Lego sets, and put in a big box, as many families with children would know. And now the idea is that there are different ways to approach this box of Lego bricks, and he then goes on explaining that the way people approach this sort of falls on a spectrum. At the other end, you just go to the box with an idea what you want to build, and you build basically whatever you want. You find the appropriate bricks and you build something. And obviously the bricks here represent the verses of the Bible, and the idea is that you just use the verses of the Bible to build up something that never actually was meant to be. And then the other end of the spectrum is that you go to the box and you very diligently want to build exactly the original sets from which the pieces came from, which is of course a difficult task, but that's what you want to do. You don't care about what you would like to do, you just want to find out what the original sets were. And this is basically the metaphor or analogy he's proposing. But let's see the first clip, how he ended up proposing this idea.
The Lego bricks theory of biblical interpretation. And this is a metaphor that I developed after I had a number of people on the internet tell me that, when it comes to how to interpret a given passage, you have to consider the whole canon of the Bible. You have to look at the picture on the box.
So, I've here extracted again a quotation from this video. I hope I got it right. So he starts by saying that he got this comment from people saying that you have to consider the whole canon of the Bible, and you have to look at the picture on the box. These are his words. Now I'll pause there for a bit, because I think it's very clear from this, at least to me it seems, that the canon of the Bible is kind of identified with the picture on the box. And this of course kind of means that there's like a box of Lego bricks, and the picture on the box tells what you're supposed to be building. And I think this is a perfectly reasonable place to be, and I think I would expect many Bible scholars to agree that if you want to see what the meaning of individual Bible verse is, it makes sense to try to see how it fits the whole canon. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think this is a perfectly defensible idea. But the way he continues then...
That argument never sat well with me, because there is no box and there is no picture on the box.
That he said that this argument never sat well with me because there is no box. And this is quite a surprising turn, because if you first thought that the canon of the Bible is the picture on the box, and now you say there's no box, are you saying there's no canon of the Bible? Of course there is. So this is this is rather weird what's happening here. Now I would be tempted to say that this is actually something that very much resembles a straw manning, in my opinion, because what it is that you start this thing with an argument, which I just explained is perfectly reasonable, and it has occurred to me as well many times that you should look at the whole canon, but then you change it to something completely different. And indeed what he does then, later, sort of basically throughout the rest of this video, is that he associates the picture on the box with a worldview of an individual or preconceptions that exist outside the Bible. So that basically what he's saying is that the person has some preconceptions, and then he goes to the Bible, reads the verses so that they support that individual's preconceptions. So actually this picture on the box is now identified with one's worldview, and this is a far better target to attack, and therefore I think this is a perfect example of a straw man. So you go from the perfectly reasonable idea suggesting the consideration of the whole canon, which is a defensible position in my opinion, to saying that actually what you're talking about is a preconception, and you just go to the Bible and read whatever it is you want to achieve from those verses, and that of course would be wrong. So that's I think is first issue, that and also I should say I find this video to be rather provocative, and I think quite intentionally so. And this content creator has produced, I think, quite a few provocative videos, and I think this kind of a framing of the problem is one that tends to provoke people, because kind of subtly you introduce something quite reasonable and defensible, and then you kind of shift the focus onto something else, to a strawman, which is far more easy to attack, and you feel those people who actually have had that reasonable, defensible principle in their mind, they feel they are being attacked now. So I think this is unnecessary provocation. But yeah, I just wanted to point this out because, one of the things, I don't want to necessarily criticize too much this content creator. He's definitely an expert. I am not. But what I think, I get the feeling that there may be some level of intentional provocation here, and I think I just do not like confrontation and provocation unnecessarily, and I think it's easier to not be provoked when you see the tricks that are being used to provoke you. And actually on this, following this line of thought, we get to the next point. So let's see the next clip.
In trying to build something, you're going to fall somewhere along a spectrum of intent, where on one end of the spectrum, you're building whatever you want to build. Whatever is going to be most meaningful or useful or fun for you, that's what you're building. So you don't necessarily have to use the bricks from a given set to create what that set was intended to build. You can use them to build whatever you want. That's on this end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, maybe we want to actually complete the set. We might not have all the pieces, but based on what we do see, maybe we can get most of the way towards figuring out what was this set intended to build. And maybe we try to build that. We don't have the instructions. We certainly don't have the picture on the box. But based on our knowledge of how Lego works, maybe we can get most of the way there. Maybe we can construct the thing and be like, yeah, it's got some gaps in it, but we're pretty sure we know what it is. And maybe you bring in some pieces from another set to complete the picture. But that's the spectrum, and you're going to be somewhere in between the two ends of that spectrum.
So, in this clip, he explains this, what I already said earlier, about the people falling on the spectrum of how they want to interpret the Bible. And now there's this, and again, I totally understand. I've seen this content creator get maybe a bit upset when people start sort of tone policing his videos, and I totally agree that this might go into the category of tone policing. And let me be clear, I'm perfectly fine with what he's saying here. I don't have any issue with that. It's just that, like I said earlier, I'm pointing this out because to me this seems like a very obvious way of trying to cause confrontation and provoke people. And again, just to sort of avoid provocation, I'm just pointing out something that got my attention because it seems quite, I would say, even amusing. So when he's describing how people fall on the spectrum, so if we first he talks about the end of the spectrum where you have your preconceptions and then you go and choose the bricks so that you can build a case for your preconceptions. And what you see is that the terminology he uses, you're building whatever you want to build. So there's whatever wanna you. These are exactly the kind of words that, and he's specifically talking about you, the person watching the video. Whatever, again, the next line, whatever is going to be most meaningful or fun for you. You can use them to build whatever you want. So these things that you definitely want, and then whatever, like, who cares, whatever you want, and it's all about you. And then you see the shift in tone when he starts talking about the other end of the spectrum, where he doesn't say where he lies, but I think it's quite obvious where he is in this case, because now the tone changes and the pronoun as well. Now it's maybe we want to actually complete. It becomes conditional. You have maybe and might in every one of these, and it's we. We might not have all the pieces. Maybe we can get most of the way. Maybe we try to build that. So, the whole thing kind of changes. And I think this is I think it's easy to miss what's happening here, but it's quite clearly, the point is to kind of those people who felt the sting in the beginning of the video, and feeling that these are the people who have disagreed with this content creator maybe, and making the appeal to look at the big picture. Now it's clear that he's making a very strong sort of lines between those people and himself, this content creator. There's a confrontation, no way around that. So again, once you see this happening, it's far easier to sort of not be provoked. So that's what but like I said, it's perfectly fine to have this. There's I don't want to criticize the reasoning, and this is certainly one type of content one can produce, so that's absolutely fine. I have no problem with that. All right. So, but then there is an issue. So let's that I want to address, which is maybe a more kind of factual, or I don't know what you call it. But let's see the next clip.
When people talk about things that are biblical, overwhelmingly they're not talking about things that are actually consistent principles that are held by all or even the majority of the authors from beginning to end in the Bible.
Right. So again, I have here a quote. So he says, overwhelmingly they, and by they he means biblical ideas, are not consistent principles that are held by all or even the majority of the authors from the beginning to the end in the Bible. And now with this one, when I first heard this, I was just quite surprised, because I think this is a completely unreasonable demand. This is not really an argument or claim or anything like that. It's just a demand that if in order for things to be valid, you're demanding that there are principles that are held by all or the majority of authors from the beginning to the end in the Bible. And there I find many things quite problematic with this. Like the first one, isn't it obvious that this person, whoever it was who wrote the Pentateuch, or the authors of the Pentateuch, why would you expect they had same principles as Paul, who is then writing the material towards the end, and most notably after the resurrection? And basically based on this whole idea, and all these principles are very much related to building the Christian church. So the author of the Pentateuch would even have no idea of this. So I don't think there's any problem. This is a long narrative that goes across millennia, and part of the story is that the authors' principles that they hold change over time. So I think this is completely unreasonable. You wouldn't expect Moses to say anything about Christ dying for our sins. That's absolutely unreasonable. The second thing is that I'm not even sure why the authors, the principles that the authors hold, make much sense. If we would take the Gospels, for example, and include maybe Paul in that, I don't know why we would even care about their principles. Like let's take Mark. Mark is not even a character in the Bible narratives, I think. as far as we know who the authors are, Mark, at least what I've understood, could be just some sort of a scribe or translator who kind of interviewed maybe Peter and others to write these things down. But we have no idea who Mark was. The person, the kind of the person of Mark, is completely irrelevant, and his principles, what he holds. I really don't think anyone cares what Mark thought. The same somewhat goes with Luke, who is not really a character in the gospel narratives at all. And I have here at the bottom of this slide also a little snippet from Luke 1, verses 3 to 4, where he's explicitly saying that his job is just to report things and not to convey his own principles. Of course, when you have different authors, there's a little bit of personal flavor comes through, but the point is that they are accounts of things that are allegedly took place. So yeah, I really don't know why we would care about their principles that they hold. Now, Matthew and John, who are, I think, disciples of Jesus, maybe they are a bit more relevant because they are somehow part of the biblical stories. But still, again, their job seems to be as well reporting the events rather than giving their own principles. And also, it should maybe be said that that I know this content creator has been very keen on questioning the univocality of the Bible. And to that extent, I don't have any objection to that. I think it's perfectly understandable that these four different authors of the four different Gospels add their own flavor to these events. I think the univocality shouldn't be understood as sort of saying that everyone just talks is motivated by same reasons and has the same interpretation of things. I think what matters is that they are talking about the same thing. So yeah, I think this is a completely unreasonable demand, what he's making, and I really don't even... Well, actually, I know why he is making this point, because this is a kind of a segue to his point he makes later about slavery. So I think this has been included in order to kind of pave the way for the very emotional point he's making about slavery later on. But I'll get back to that shortly. All right. And then I think the next clip is sort of related to what actually triggered, I think, this video, as far as I understand. So I think this was triggered by a social media post where abortion or anti-abortion sentiments were regarded or claimed to be biblical, and this is what this content creator objected. And so let's see the clip now.
There is no biblical view on abortion. The Bible never once addresses it. So as a proxy for a position on abortion, we've got to look for a position on fetal personhood.
Again, here's a quotation. He says, as a proxy for a position on abortion, we've got to look for a position on fetal personhood. And to this, I would just simply say, no, we don't. I think this is very much jumping into conclusions and skipping a lot of nuances, because I think it's unwarranted to make the implication that if there's no explicit mention of abortion, then the only thing you can do is find some sort of idea of fetal personhood in the Bible. And what I would say, first of all, my own personal journey on my views of abortion start very much from non-biblical grounds. For me, the whole view of my view on abortion is simply based on the personhood. But that whether the fetus is a person or not, I don't need the Bible to tell me that. This is very much my own idea, an understanding whether the unborn baby is a person or not. I don't appeal to the Bible, and I would say I don't have, of course, a hard statistic, but from my experience, I think overwhelming majority of people that I hear criticizing abortion, they don't appeal to things like Exodus 21. The thing they most often appeal is Genesis 1:27, which I quoted here. So God created humans in his image. In the image of God, he created them. This is, I think, the most crucial one, because that means that human life is special. And then there are other bits, like I think, what is it, Galatians, which says that, in Christ we're all one, and so on. So I really don't think this fetal person who has to be there in the Bible, people still very much appeal to the Bible, but it's Genesis 1:27. The uncompromisable value of human life, which is underlying there. On this point, we could take the argument and say, well, are we now imposing our own preconceptions to the Bible, or is that what Bible is saying? And that's a separate thing, something to talk about. But my point here is just to highlight that this jump to conclusions that he makes, that if there's no explicit mention of abortion, you need to find a claim for personhood. It's just unwarranted. That's my main point. All right, so this was the last point I wanted to make about this video, and I should say that he also goes and makes a very emotional case against slavery, and how slavery has been sort of endorsed by the Bible and Christians throughout the ages. Now, I don't want to go into that discussion for a couple of reasons. Well, for one reason, because it's just purely emotional appeal. There is no arguments given whatsoever, so there's nothing that I could hold on to. I mean, these claims that I've cited here are very specific, concrete bits where I disagree with the content creator a bit, but when it comes to the slavery bit, he's just not really giving anything to discuss. So there are lots of people, lots of discussions, lots of books, lots of things that you can find on this topic, and not having any specific claim or argument to address my discussion about slavery would just boil down to basically repeating arguments from literature and other discussions by other people. So I really don't feel that I need to address that, because the content creator didn't go in any depth on that argument. He just made an accusation and left it at that, and that's absolutely fine. I understand it's a noble cause, and I understand he takes the slavery issue. You can see it from the video. He takes it very, very it's very close to his heart. So I fully appreciate that, and I entirely share his view on slavery itself. Not necessarily the role of the church, and especially the role of the church in abolishing slavery, but still, yeah, I totally condemn slavery. I think that's all for now. So once again, as always, I really do hope I didn't offend anyone. I don't necessarily want this to be a kind of attack on the content creator. Like I said, I found this video to be quite provocative, and I just wanted to clarify a few issues that I kind of felt were provocative. And when you see what are the things that are provoking you, then it's easier not to be provoked. And I think not being provoked and try to carry out constructive, peaceful discussion and discourse about however difficult topics is a noble goal. So that's my intention here. I hope I didn't offend anyone, and God bless you all.